Good day, everybody. I can't remember anymore if it's morning or afternoon. Who knows? But good day. Welcome back to Grace Church for some more hymns of grace. It is Tuesday, October 27th. Hard to believe October is leaving us behind as we speak. We have some great hymns for you today. The first hymn is slightly date related. This Saturday, I'm sure most people know that this Saturday is the feast of Halloween, but it's also Reformation Day. And so I thought because of Reformation Day, we clearly should address hymn 688, which is A Mighty Fortress. This wasn't actually specifically requested by anyone, but I'm going to say that it was requested by Mark Schrank, a parishioner at Grace Church, member of the choir, and Mark and his wife Val. And Mark, being a former Lutheran, loves this hymn, and he would request it if we were in church and here together. I know he would be asking for it. So Mark, this is for you. So we're going to do hymn 688, Ein feste Burg, which actually is A Mighty Fortress. This text and tune are among probably the most important of all Christian hymns, and it's one of the earliest examples of a psalm paraphrase, Psalm 46. Written by Martin Luther. We all know that, and there's a lot of scholarship around the hymn, but we're not exactly certain when it was first written, exactly the date of its writing, or when it was first published. First appearance of it in print, both the text and the melody, was likely in Luther's congregational hymn book, Geistliche Lieder, which is sacred song, published in Wittenberg in 1529. No copy of that book survives. The title on the Augsburg broadsheet is revealing. It's called A Hymn of Comfort. The accepted view is a little bit different, though. If you think about the text of A Mighty Fortress, it has been referred to by a range of Protestant triumphalistic epithets, including the following. But before I tell you what they are, I'll just say that the word triumphalistic comes up as misspelled in the computer, but it's a great word. So these are some of the sort of monikers that have been given to this text. The Marseillaise of the Reformation, God's Almighty Grenadier March, the Battle Hymn of the Reformation. Very strong references, of course, here to this text. The music, the later sort of four-square musical version, and we'll talk a little about the two musical versions of this, the later four-square musical version of the tune got quoted by Mendelssohn, Meyerbeer, and Wagner. Luther saw this more as a hymn in which Christians could take comfort and hope in a time of turmoil or tribulation, more than a vehicle of belligerent and provocative Protestantism. So that's interesting for our current times because, again, sometimes when we're in tough times, as we are these days, one person will have a thought or an idea that will be used to comfort those particularly afflicted by what's going on. Another human being might see it differently and take that idea, whether it be a writing or a song or a catchphrase that was intended to be comfort, and somebody might take it and turn it into more of a battle cry. And often that's what gets remembered, as we could find many examples of that. Doesn't mean that's bad. Sometimes that's what actually makes change happen and saves people from bad things, is that something has become a bit of a battle cry. But just important to note that Luther did view it more as a hymn of comfort. Apparently Luther loved Psalm 46 very much, on which the hymn text is based. And I'll just read you briefly from our hymnal companion again a bit of Luther's thoughts here. This is a psalm of thanksgiving, Psalm 46, which the people of Israel sang at that time in response to the miracles of God, who had defended and sustained the city of Jerusalem, where they lived against the rantings and ravings of all kings and nations, and preserved it in peace against all war and conflict. Then, speaking after the manner of Scripture, the essence of the city is portrayed as a little spring, a small rivulet that will not run dry, in contrast to the great rivers and oceans of the nations, that is, the great kingdoms, principalities, and estates, that will dry up and disappear. But we sing in praise to God because God is with us, God who miraculously preserves his word and Christendom against the gates of hell, against the ravings of all devils, fanatical spirits, the world, the flesh, sin, death, etc., so that our little spring remains a living fountain, while foul and stinking drains, puddles, and cisterns will run dry. That certainly can be our prayer. Martin Luther's strong thoughts there. Luther also wrote the tune, Ein feste Burg, sometime between the end of 1527 and early 1528. The original rhythmic version, on which hymn 687 is based, same text and roughly the same tune, but very different rhythmically, has given way to the isometric version based on Bach's chorale adaptation in Cantata 180. Oh, sorry, I think it's Cantata 80, my bad. I think I wrote that down wrong. Cantata 80, I believe. It is Bach's harmonized version that we have in the hymnal 1982 today, and that we know best. And I'll certainly give you a verse of that. But before I do, just 687, which doesn't get sung quite as often, and we've talked recently on two different occasions about hymns with irregular rhythm or meter, and that's a little bit harder for people sometimes. That's why sometimes this is shied away from, and because it's a little bit harder if you don't read rhythmic values easily. There is a movement to revive these rhythmic German tunes and do those more original ones rather than the ones that have been sort of squared out into measures, and some churches are doing that. Here at Grace and in many places, we're still using 688, and it's really wonderful. But just a bit of 687. This is closer. It's not exactly Martin Luther's original tune, but it's closer. This is harmonized by Hans Leo Hassler, German composer, wonderful German composer. But just listen to the rhythm. That's great fun, and if you read music well, that's not hard. But if you don't, and if you haven't heard that several hundred times, that's probably really hard to catch on to. So the version we know is, the melody is basically the same, but harmonized by Bach here, much more like what we would think of as a typical German chorale or hymn in our words. I would say much easier to sing. Beautiful harmony, which can be sung as well. So I don't know of a stronger hymn than A Mighty Fortress, Ein feste Burg by Martin Luther, with a harmonization by Bach. So happy Reformation Day. Here's A Mighty Fortress. Just fantastic. Really doesn't get better than that. Again, this hymn is set in C major, so we get those really low, wonderful low notes. And at the end, we really almost have a scale. And it turns up, skips, finishes the scale. That's a really, really strong way to end the hymn. So, again, happy Reformation Day. Mark, hope you and Val were listening, and I hope you enjoyed that. So our good friend Paul Twelves has requested another hymn. I'm so happy he requested this. This hymn, hymn 412 in our hymnal, goes back to my college days, for me personally. And even though my college was in my hometown, I was able to have really some wonderful new experiences there that I had not had just in the school system growing up, which was barely 2 blocks from the college where I went to school. And I think when we sang this hymn at opening convocation, I got to play it on the organ for opening convocation. This was at Bethel College, now Bethel University. And I think I knew right away that, yes, I was a little worried, was college going to really be different than high school since they were physically so close together and in this tiny little town? And I thought, yes, because we didn't sing anything like this. Certainly in the churches where I was either directing music or playing the organ, we didn't have this hymn. And so this hymn is called Earth and All Stars. I'll tell you a little about it and then play a verse or two of it. This quite an unusual hymn, as I mentioned, and it was new to me. This would have been 1986 or so. The hymn was already about 20 years old at that point. It's an exuberant, modern setting of the great canticle. We have all these canticles in church: Magnificat, Nunc Dimittis, Jubilate Deo, the Te Deum. These are all great canticles of the church. This one is Benedicite Omnia Opera Domini, or Bless All the Works of the Lord, really. So that's a canticle we might sing. This is a sort of an adaptation or paraphrase of that idea that everything praises the Lord, praises God. Another great, I'll just quick side on another great example of that's not a hymn is Benjamin Britten's wonderful cantata, Rejoice in the Lamb, if you know that, where basically everything from the cat and the mouse to the flowers to the letters in the alphabet, everything praises God. This is a little bit like that. That uses traditional images as well as present-day experience of God's creation. And it's some of that present-day language that will surprise you if you're singing this for the first time. You go, well, I'm not used to singing words like that in a hymn. We'll talk about some of those. The text was composed by Herbert Brokering for the 90th anniversary of St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota in 1964. So while we think of it as a new hymn, 1964, as we all know, is actually not that new anymore, but it still feels new to us. The author says, I tried to gather into a hymn of praise the many facets of life which merge in the life of community. So there are references to building, nature, learning, family, war, festivity. The tune, which is just simply named for the text, the tune name is Earth and All Stars, was written by David and Johnson, an American composer who wrote lots of organ music. Many of you heard me play David Johnson's trumpet tunes. He has lots of festive trumpet tunes. And the tune was written for this text, really quite singable, and also it has a great refrain, and everybody likes a great refrain. So just a quick look at this hymn. Earth and all stars, loud rushing planets, sing to the Lord a new song. O victory, loud shouting army, sing to the Lord a new song. Those are not even the most startling words. We go on to talk about rain, pipes, steel, labs, cymbals, hammers, test tubes, wisdom, truth, snowstorms, leaves, cellos, workers, peoples, members, limestone, athletes, daughters, harps, flutes, flowers, trees. Really amazing. And actually, I hadn't thought until this moment when we just talked about this, how similar this concept is to Britten and his Rejoice in the Lamb, which was written, of course, well before this text. I just wonder if Mr. Brokering was thinking about that at all. I'll try to find out, but I don't know. Anyway, it's a wonderfully startling text. Loud cheering people, athlete and band. This is something you'd sing on the football field, so to speak. So it's a wonderful tune as well. So you get these sort of interesting words, Earth and all stars, loud rushing planets, and then this bit of a mini refrain, sing to the Lord a new song. Then more interesting words, harp, lute, and lyre, loud humming cellos, sing to the Lord a new. So we've already had a little mini refrain twice, and then you get the actual refrain. So all of that refrainness that happens in there makes it really singable. Even if you get tumbled up on the words a bit, you can belt out that sing to the Lord a new song, which is of course a wonderful idea in many of the Psalms, Psalm 98, Psalm 96, talking about singing to the Lord a new song. And we won't by any means do all these stanzas right now, but number 3 begins trumpet and pipes, loud clashing cymbals. So we might get some really bright sort of mixture-y sounds going here for the loud clashing cymbals. And then we could do for trumpets and pipes, we could be really obnoxious and have sort of all this sort of crazy loud sound going on. And we could start stanza 3, trumpets and pipes. Loud clashing cymbals. this hymn also has the distinction for me as the first hymn I ever wrote for which I wrote a descant. And I wrote it for a job interview years ago in Nashville, Tennessee. And I had some friends of mine record it. Anybody might be listening or watching this. Cynthia Prosser, Christy Pybus, Mary Manspeaker, I think all recorded this descant for me to send in on a cassette tape for this audition. Didn't get the job, but I'm sure it had nothing to do with them. So just has a lot of great memories, and then singing it with them and other friends at college. So we'll have one stanza straight through. I think I remember the descant went on a scale. That's probably why I didn't get the job. Oh well, never mind. So we're going to take a quick field trip for our third hymn for today. David's going to follow me down to the piano, and we will do our last hymn for today, requested by Levon and Dave Seifert. Trying to do this with some dignity. There we go. So here we are in our new home, quite a trek from the organ to the piano. This hymn is really well suited, particularly the accompaniment to the piano. It comes out of our supplemental hymnal, Wonder, Love, and Praise. Again, this was requested by Dave and Levon Seifert. It's hymn 757, Will You Come and Follow Me? Sometimes known as the Summons, sort of a nickname for the hymn. So I'm so happy they suggested it. I'm very fond of the text, and I know this tune that we're going to talk about today a little bit less well than the other tune that with which this is associated, but we'll dive in. So this text is by Scottish hymn writer John Bell. John Bell had studied to be a music teacher and then felt a call to the ministry. He became part of the Iona community, which is a religious community in Scotland. And Dave and Levon have been to Iona and love that place very much, so this is near and dear to them. He wrote a number of hymns that he felt addressed something that was lacking in Scottish hymnals of the day. From an interview in Reformed Worship, March 1993, Bell says, "I discovered that seldom did our hymns represent the plight of poor people to God. There was nothing that dealt with unemployment, nothing that dealt with living in a multicultural society and feeling disenfranchised. There was nothing about child abuse that reflected concern for the developing world, nothing that helped to see ourselves as brothers and sisters to those who are suffering from poverty or persecution." This hymn, tune, or text is most often sung to the traditional 19th century Scottish tune, Kelvingrove. Kelvingrove is a park and an art museum in Glasgow, Scotland. I've had the great pleasure to be there. But in Wonder, Love, and Praise, it is paired with the American composer John Hooker's tune, Mary Alexandra. So that's what we're going to focus on, but quickly, this is Kelvingrove, those of you who may know it. Old Scottish traditional tune adapted, but that's not our focus today. So I am very fortunate that my good friend David Perry Oots, who's director of music at Church of the Holy Communion in Memphis, Tennessee, has a wonderful blog that he had been keeping up with, and he wrote about this tune coming into being associated with this text. And I got in touch with him just in time for our recording and got his blessing and permission to share his words with you. So everything I'm about to say now is from David Perry Oots. In 1989, John Hooker, who was the musician at St. Philip in the Hills in Tucson, Arizona, John Hooker's rector wanted a new experience for the parish's Maundy Thursday dinner. The theme of the dinner was an upper room experience, a calling of each person by name for servant ministry, in the same way that Jesus empowered his disciples for ministry at that significant Thursday supper before his Friday crucifixion. A priest and parish musician by this time, John Hooker, and Memphians, people from Memphis, Tennessee, might remember him as organist choirmaster of Calvary Church downtown in Memphis. John kept coming back to the summons, this text, will you come and follow me, is a perfect text for this Maundy Thursday dinner. But he didn't feel that Kelvin Grove, the tune, was quite right for the mood they wanted to set for this dinner. So he wrote a new tune, and he named it for his friend Mary Alexandra, who had returned from a pilgrimage to the Isle and community of Iona the prior year. Mary Alexandra, the tune, is unique and transforming in the same way that Calvin Hampton's tune, St. Helena, is for There's a Wideness in God's Mercy, which we must do. Somebody requested so we can do it. As John said to me, as John said to David Oots, this text keeps turning back onto itself over and over. And indeed, John has captured that with his rich, lush key of D-flat major. His gently rocking accompaniment is through composed, that is, never ending once you begin. With a brief introduction, short interludes, and a tag at the end, the piece is seamless and melodically turns back upon itself, mimicking the text until its gracious close. Mary Alexandra adapts to both the organ and piano, but David Oots, and I agree, find it especially beautiful on the piano, which is how they generally would sing it at their church in Memphis. The summons contains 13 questions asked by Jesus in the first person. And the first 4 stanzas are in Jesus' voice, while the 5th stanza is our response to Jesus. Stanza 4 will cause the reader and singer to do a literary about-face. Will you love the you hide, if I but call your name? It's worth pondering that phrase, Dr. Oots tells us, and I think he's right. Will you love the you hide, if I but call your name? So very grateful to Levon and Dave for requesting this, and so grateful to David Perry Oots for sharing that wonderful background and story of John Hooker's lovely tune, Mary Alexandra. So this is Will You Come and Follow Me. I will do you the favor of not doing the whole hymn, and I certainly won't sing all of it, but I may sing a verse. I'll play a verse and maybe sing a verse. Maybe one and the last. Thank you for being with us today, and remember you can join us on Thursday for an in-person concert with Peter Stoltzfus Burton, organ, from St. John's, Newport. Concerts are at noon on Thursday. Please email me and let me know if you would like to be registered, vedwards@gracepvd.org. And if you make it here in person, we have a very special, exciting surprise and treat for you, which I think you will love. So it's worth being here. Have a great week, everybody.